His porch light was on when I pulled up. He opened the door before I knocked, which meant he had seen me coming and had a moment to prepare himself. He was not prepared. He looked at my face, then at the envelope in my hand, and the color left him the way water leaves a cloth. I had driven 4 hours for this, but to understand what that envelope contained, you need to know what happened 18 years before that night. My name is Nora Vess. I was 33 years old the night I stood on that porch, and I had not seen my father in 18 years. I am a rural mail carrier for the United States Postal Service, Route 12 out of the Kingsport, Tennessee post office, a route that covers 41 miles of two-lane road through the hills of Sullivan County. I have driven that route in ice storms, in August heat that made the steering wheel too hot to hold without a rag, and in fog so thick I had to slow to 10 miles an hour and count mailboxes by number because I could not read the names. I have never missed a delivery day, not one, in 9 years. I tell you that not to impress you. I tell you that because it is the only way I know how to explain who I am and why what happened to me at 15 years old did not finish me the way it was supposed to. I grew up in Harlan County, Kentucky, in a house on Birch Creek Road that my father's family had owned since his grandfather built it. My father's name is Dale Vess. He worked for the county road department for 30 years. My mother's name is Linda. My sister Cassie is 4 years older than me. We have not spoken since I was 15. On my nightstand, for many years after I left Harlan County, I kept a single photograph of my grandmother, Ruth Vess, who everyone called Nana Ruth. She is sitting on her front porch in the picture, shelling beans into a colander, not looking at the camera. I took that photograph when I was 10 years old with a disposable camera my father had bought at a gas station. Nana Ruth died 14 months ago, and she left me a letter, and the letter is why I drove to my father's door on a November night with an envelope in my hand. I had no reason to think she had kept records all those years. That was the thing I had not counted on. The house on Birch Creek Road had a creek behind it that flooded every spring and ran clear as glass every September. My father used to take me fishing there on Saturday mornings when I was small, just the two of us, before Cassie was old enough to care about such things. He did not talk much during those mornings. That was fine with me. We sat on the bank and watched the water, and the quiet between us was comfortable in the way quiet can be when you trust the person next to you. I trusted my father completely. I want to say that clearly. Not because it makes the story more dramatic, but because it is true, and because the truth of it matters for everything that comes after. He was not a warm man in an expressive way. He did not say things easily, but he had shown up consistently for 15 years, and I confused showing up with a guarantee. My mother and Cassie had a closeness I observed from a distance the way you observe weather. They were in the kitchen together in the mornings. They watched the same programs. They spoke in a shorthand I never fully learned. I did not take it personally. Some people fit together in ways that have nothing to do with who deserves what. Cassie was 4 years older than me and had always known how to manage our parents. She knew when to ask for things and how to frame requests and which version of herself to present in a given moment. I thought of it as a talent. I did not understand until much later that it was something else entirely. The thing I remember most clearly about those years is Nana Ruth's kitchen. She lived 8 miles down the road from us, and I spent most of my summer afternoons there because she let me be quiet, and she always had something that needed doing. Snapping beans, shelling corn, stacking firewood. She was a woman who believed that work and conversation were not mutually exclusive, and she would talk to me while we worked about everything and nothing, the way older women talk to children when they have decided the child is worth talking to. There was a summer when I was 13, when Cassie borrowed money from my mother's wallet without asking and told my mother I had taken it. My mother believed her. I remember standing in the kitchen while my mother told me she was disappointed in me, and I remember the way Cassie stood just behind her, slightly out of her line of sight, and I remember thinking, She is very good at this. I told Nana Ruth about it that afternoon. She listened without interrupting. She did not say that Cassie was lying, though I believe she knew. She said, "Write things down, Nora. Whatever happens to you, write it down." I found out later that Nana Ruth had been taking her own advice for 61 years. The summer I turned 15, my father's sister passed away in Middlesbrough, and we drove down on a Friday in August to attend the service and spend the weekend. The drive down was uneventful. My father had the radio on, a country station, and my mother was in a decent mood. Cassie sat beside me in the back seat reading a magazine. It was a normal family weekend, as far as I could tell. What I did not know was that my aunt had recently updated her will. She did not have much, but she had a small savings account and a truck, and she had left them to my father. Cassie knew this before the rest of us. I found out later how she knew. I found out later what she had decided to do about it. The drive home was on a Saturday night in August of 2005. It was raining hard by the time we reached the stretch of Route 421 that runs through the hills north of Cumberland. I had fallen asleep in the back seat. I woke up when the car slowed. I found out later that while I was sleeping, my sister had been talking. The car stopped on the shoulder of Route 421 at approximately 9:30 at night on August 14th. The rain was heavy enough that the windshield wipers could not keep pace with it, and the only light came from the headlights and the occasional flash of lightning over the ridge to the east. My father turned around in the driver's seat. His face was not a face I recognized. My mother was looking straight ahead through the windshield. She would not turn around. My father said, "Get out of the car." I said I did not understand. He said, "Cassie told us what you did. Get out of the car, Nora." I looked at Cassie. She was looking out her window at the rain. She had a very particular expression on her face that I have thought about many times since. A careful blankness, the expression of someone concentrating on looking neutral. What I had supposedly done, according to my sister, was steal $40 from our aunt's purse at the service and then tell our aunt that Cassie had taken it. This was specific and detailed enough to have the shape of truth. I had not done it. I said I had not done it. My mother said, quote 3, "I do not know to this day whether she actually found $40 in my bag or whether she needed a reason to say that she did. It does not change what happened next." My father got out of the car in the rain, walked to my door, and opened it. He said, underscore underscore quote underscore for underscore underscore. I was 15 years old. I was wearing a cotton dress and sandals. I had my purse with me, which contained approximately $7 and my library card. I got out of the car. The physical sensation I remember most clearly is not fear. It is a specific cold, even in August, when rain comes down that hard. The kind of cold that arrives in your body before your mind has caught up with what is happening. My hands went completely still. I remember looking at them and noticing how still they were. The car pulled back onto the road. I stood on the shoulder of Route 421 and watched the taillights disappear around the curve. I stood there for what I think was about 2 minutes before I started walking toward a set of lights about a quarter mile ahead, which turned out to be a gas station with a payphone outside. I called Nana Ruth from that payphone. I told her where I was. She said, quote 5. She drove 40 minutes in that rain to come and get me. She never said a word against my father on the drive home. She had the heat running in the car because I was wet through, and she had thought to bring a towel. And when we got to her house, she made me eat something before she let me go to bed. In the morning, she called my father. I do not know what was said in that conversation. What I know is that nobody came to get me. I lived with Nana Ruth for 3 years. I graduated from Harlan County High School in 2008. I drove myself to orientation at East Tennessee State University in her truck. My parents did not attend my graduation. Cassie sent a card with no return address. I still have the card. I kept it for reasons I cannot fully explain, except that some things you hold on to not out of sentiment, but out of the same instinct that makes you keep a receipt. And then Nana Ruth died, 14 months ago, and left me a letter. The letter was 4 pages, handwritten, sealed in a manila envelope that her attorney had held for 6 years. I read it at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning in October, in the house I rent on the east side of Kingsport, with a cup of coffee that went cold before I was halfway through the first page. I was not running on panic. I had learned, in the years since I was 15, that panic is what you do when you have not yet decided, and I had been deciding something, slowly and quietly, for a long time, because what Nana Ruth had written was going to tell me something I had suspected for 18 years and could never prove, and it was going to tell me something else entirely, something I had not suspected at all, that would change the shape of everything I thought I knew about what my family had done. Now I want to be clear about something. When I read that letter, I was not angry the way you might expect. I had been angry at 15. By 33, what I felt was something quieter and more precise. The way a compass settles on north after you stop moving it. I knew what I had, I knew what it meant, and I knew that the people who had driven away from me on that road had spent 18 years assuming I would stay gone. They had made financial decisions on that assumption, they had made legal decisions on that assumption, and they had left a paper trail. Paper is patient in a way that people are not, and nobody knew yet what I was holding. Nana Ruth's letter was written in 3 distinct registers, and I noticed the shift between them the way you notice a change in road surface when you have been driving the same route for years. The first page was practical and careful, the handwriting of someone who had thought about what she was setting down. The second and third pages were something older and more tired. The fourth page was just her voice, plain and direct, the way she had always talked to me at her kitchen table. She started with the money. Nana Ruth had maintained a savings account at First Community Bank in Harlan since 1974. Over 60 years, she had accumulated $41,000 in that account through small deposits, birthday money she never spent, and the quarterly income from a timber lease on 12 acres she had inherited from her own mother. She had listed me as the sole beneficiary on that account in 2008, 2 weeks after I drove myself to college in her truck. She had not told me. She had simply done it and filed the paperwork and gone back to shelling beans. In March of 2019, someone had come into that bank with documentation requesting a beneficiary change. The account had been updated to list Cassie Vess Hartley as sole beneficiary. Nana Ruth had not authorized that change. She had discovered it in the fall of 2019 when she reviewed her documents with the attorney who was holding her letter, a man named Gordon Farley, who had handled her affairs for 22 years. She had not told me at the time because she was 81 years old, and she was ill, and she did not want me to spend her last years dealing with it instead of visiting her. That was the most Nana Ruth decision I had ever encountered in my life. She wrote, "I wanted to see your face when you came to see me, not the face you make when you are fighting something. I know that face. I have seen it since you were 8 years old." I had to put the letter down after that and look out the window at my driveway for a while. The fourth page told me what Cassie had actually said in the car on August 14th, 2005. Nana Ruth knew because my father had told her, in the phone call she made the morning after she picked me up from the gas station. What Cassie had said was not just that I stole $40. She had told my parents, in the car on the way home, that she had caught me going through our aunt's nightstand earlier that afternoon, and that I had said something to Cassie afterward about how it was not fair that the money would all go to my father, and that the younger kids in the family never got anything. She had constructed a motive. A 15-year-old had constructed a motive and delivered it in a moving vehicle in a rainstorm, and it had worked well enough to put me on the side of a road. I finished the coffee even though it was cold. Then I called Gordon Farley. Gordon Farley had been a solo estate attorney in Harlan for 30 years. He was 67 years old, semi-retired, and he had the phone manner of someone who had delivered difficult information often enough that he no longer softened its edges unnecessarily. He said, quote, 7. I asked him what I had. He said, quote, 8. He paused. Quote, 9. I asked how to get it. He said, quote, 10. He said it the way someone says a thing that is simply true, with no particular satisfaction. Quote, 11. I thanked him, he said. Quote, 12. He was not wrong. The documents Gordon Farley had filed on Nana Ruth's behalf were labeled, tabbed, and ordered chronologically, and they included a copy of the original beneficiary designation from 2008 with my name on it, a written account of her conversation with the bank manager in October of 2019, and a copy of the changed designation showing Cassie's name and a date of March 14, 2019. I sent a formal written request to First Community Bank the following Monday. I sent it certified mail. Return receipt requested. 9 years of delivering mail had given me a detailed appreciation for what certified mail communicates to the person receiving it. The bank responded in 12 days. The documentation they used to process the beneficiary change in March of 2019 included a signed authorization form and a copy of a power of attorney document purporting to grant Cassie Hartley authority to act on behalf of Ruth Vess in financial matters. Nana Ruth had never signed a power of attorney for Cassie. She had one power of attorney on file, executed in 2016, naming Gordon Farley. The signature on the document the bank received was in my grandmother's name. It was not her handwriting. Gordon Farley confirmed this without hesitation when I sent him a scan. He said, "That is not how Ruth formed her capital R. She made it in 2 strokes. This is 1. He said it the same way he said everything, level and dry. That is a forged document, Nora. I printed the comparison and added it to the folder I had started. The folder was growing in the same direction all evidence grows when you are patient enough to follow it. I drove to the Sullivan County Register of Deeds on a Thursday morning and pulled the public records on my father's property on Birch Creek Road. The house was still in his name. That was not the interesting part. The interesting part was a deed of survivorship added to the property in 2017, which listed Cassie Hartley as co-owner with right of survivorship. My father had signed it. A notary had witnessed it. Everything was in order. Then I pulled the filing date. The deed had been filed on March 3, 2017, 11 days after my father's first cardiac event, which I knew about only because Nana Ruth had mentioned it in passing during a phone call that spring. And then I pulled the records on my father's life insurance policy through his county pension. The beneficiary on that policy, updated in 2016, listed Cassie Hartley. Not my mother. Not me. Just Cassie. I had to sit down. My father was 61 years old. He was not dead. But someone had been building a structure around him while he was still living in it, and the structure pointed in one direction, and that direction was Cassie. I drove to see a woman named Darlene Combs the following Saturday. Darlene was 64 years old and had been my father's nearest neighbor on Birch Creek Road for 30 years. She had known me as a child and she had known Nana Ruth, and when I called ahead she told me to come for lunch. I did not know what Darlene would have. I went because she was present, geographically and temporally, in a way I had not been able to be, and sometimes you drive to see someone just because they were there. Darlene made soup and we sat at her table for 2 hours, and in the second hour she said something that I had not come looking for. She said that in the spring of 2019, she had seen a woman she did not recognize going in and out of my father's house several times over about 2 weeks, sometimes with papers, sometimes staying for an hour. Darlene had assumed it was a county health worker. She had not thought much of it until later, when she noticed that my father seemed, in her words, quote, 15, quote, she could not say more specifically than that. I asked her if she would write down what she remembered, with dates as close as she could get them. She said, quote, 16. She got up and went to a drawer and came back with a pocket calendar from 2019. The visits were noted in pencil. 4 of them, in March. The last one was March 13th. The fraudulent power of attorney had been used at the bank on March 14th. I added Darlene's calendar to the folder. I drove back to Kingsport in the dark, 4 hours on 2-lane roads, and I did not turn the radio on. I needed the quiet. There is one more thing that arrived before I drove to my father's door, and it is the peace that made everything else make sense in a way nothing had before. Gordon Farley called me on a Tuesday evening with information he had found while reviewing Nana Ruth's older files. She had kept everything: receipts, letters, notes, going back decades. In the file from 2005, the year I was left on the side of the road, Nana Ruth had kept a handwritten note she had made after her phone call with my father the morning after. She had written down what he told her, verbatim, the way she wrote down everything that mattered. The note said that Cassie had told my parents, in the car on Route 421, that Nana Ruth had recently told Cassie she planned to change her will and leave everything to me instead of splitting it with the family. Cassie had told them Nana Ruth had said I was the only one of her grandchildren who deserved it. Cassie had fabricated that entirely. She had used Nana Ruth as the motive and me as the threat, and she had done it to a 15-year-old in a car in the rain, and it had worked well enough that my father put me on the side of the road and drove away. She had done it to position herself. Even at 19 years old, she had understood the geometry of inheritance, and she had moved a piece off the board that she considered a threat. The attorney went very quiet when I processed that out loud. I watched him read the note a second time through the scan I had sent him. I had one meeting left, and it was not going to be in a courtroom. I want to pause here for a second, because at this point, I had Nana Ruth's letter. I had the forged power of attorney. I had Darlene's calendar. I had the deed and the insurance documentation, and a handwritten note from a woman who had spent 61 years writing things down because she believed it was the decent thing to do. I had built something that could not be argued with. And I remember Gordon Farley saying to me the last time we spoke before I drove to Harlan, "Your father does not know all of this yet. He knows some of it probably. He does not know how much you have. Let him be surprised. Let the documents do the talking." And I understood exactly what he meant, because I had been underestimated by that family since I was 15 years old, and I was going to let them keep doing it. For about 4 more hours. Birch Creek Road looks the same at night as it did when I was a child, which is to say, it looks like the inside of something. Trees on both sides and no shoulder to speak of, and the occasional reflector post marking a curve. I had not driven it in 18 years. My hands knew it anyway, the same way they know my mail route, through repetition laid down so deep it stops being memory and becomes something more like muscle. I pulled up in front of my father's house at 9:47 in the evening. The porch light was on. The house was the same, white clapboard with a green metal roof, the creek invisible in the dark behind it. There was a light on in the front room. I sat in the car for approximately 2 minutes. I was not gathering myself. I had been gathered for weeks. I sat there because I wanted to be deliberate about what I was about to do, in the same way I am deliberate about every delivery on a road I know, one stop at a time, in order, no skipping ahead. I got out of the car. I was wearing my work coat, the navy one with the Postal Service patch on the sleeve, and I had the envelope under my arm. I had thought about what to wear for this, the same way I thought about wearing my uniform. Had I been a different kind of person in a different kind of story? I wore my work coat because it was honest. My father opened the door before I knocked. He had seen the headlights come up the road, and he had a moment to prepare, and he was not prepared. He was 61 years old, and he looked it. The way men who have worked outdoors all their lives look their age in a particular way, weathered and sincere. He looked at my face. He looked at the envelope. The color left him the way water leaves a cloth, slowly and then completely. He said, quote, 17, I said, Quote 18. He stepped back from the door. The front room was the same room I had grown up in, the same couch in a different fabric, the same wood paneling, the same braided rug in front of the fireplace. It smelled like wood smoke and the particular staleness of a house where one person lives alone. There was a television on with the sound muted. I noticed that he did not turn it off, which told me he had not fully decided yet what kind of conversation this was going to be. I sat down on the couch. He sat in the chair across from me. He had his hands on his knees, and he was watching me the way people watch something they are not sure is real. I put the envelope on the coffee table between us, and I opened it and I set the documents out in order. The original beneficiary designation from 2008 with my name on it. The changed designation from 2019 with Cassie's name. The forged power of attorney. Gordon Farley's written comparison of the signatures. Darlene's calendar. Nana Ruth's note from 2005, the one she had written the morning after she drove 40 minutes in the rain to pick up her granddaughter from a gas station payphone. I did not say anything while I laid them out. I just put each one on the table and pushed it toward him and let him read. He read the beneficiary documents first. His jaw moved slightly, the way it does when someone is processing something they do not want to be processing. He read the power of attorney. He read Gordon Farley's comparison of the signatures, and he looked at it for a long time. Then he picked up Nana Ruth's note. I watched him read it. He read it once, and then he set it down, and then he picked it up and read it again. His hands were not steady by the second reading. I said, quote 19. He did not deny it. He said very quietly, quote 20. I said, quote 21. He looked at the note in his hand. He set it down on the table carefully, the way you set down something fragile. And I think we both understood in that moment that it was not the paper that was fragile. The silence in that room had a texture to it that I recognized from 18 years of early mornings on empty roads. It was the silence of something that has already happened and cannot be made to unhappen. He said, quote, 22. I said, quote, 23. He said, quote, 24. He said it the way he had always said difficult things, quickly and without decoration, and I believed him that he meant it, which was the hardest thing about sitting in that room. I said, quote 25. He said he would do it. I gathered the documents and put them back in the envelope. I stood up. He said, quote 26. It was not quite a question. I looked at him for a moment. This 61-year-old man, in a house on Birch Creek Road, with a muted television and a braided rug. And I thought about the fishing on Saturday mornings and the quiet that used to be comfortable. I thought about the taillights disappearing around the curve on Route 421. I said, quote 27. I put on my coat. He walked me to the door. On the porch, under the light, he looked at me the way someone looks at a thing they know they will not see again for a long time, possibly ever. He said, quote 28, I said. Quote 29. I did not say it was all right. It was not all right. He knew it was not all right. I got in my car and I drove back down Birch Creek Road, and I did not look in the rearview mirror. Cassie was charged with forgery and financial exploitation of an elderly person in the spring of the following year. She accepted a plea agreement. She was required to repay the full $41,000 to Nana Ruth's estate, which passed to me as sole beneficiary once the fraudulent change was reversed. She received 3 years of probation and a permanent civil judgment on her record. Her husband, from what I understand, did not take the news well. I have no information about her life now, and I did not look for any. My father gave his written statement to Gordon Farley without hesitation, which was the thing that mattered legally, and which also told me something about him that I had not known how to assess from a distance of 18 years. About 2 months after the plea agreement was finalized, he sent me a letter. 4 pages, handwritten. He did not ask for forgiveness, which was the right decision. He told me about his cardiac event in 2017, the one I had only known about from Nana Ruth's passing mention. He told me that Cassie had come to the hospital and sat with him for a week, and that he had made the changes to his estate documents during that week because he was afraid and she was present and he was, in his word, confused. He used that word once and did not lean on it. He said at the end, quote, 30, I read the letter at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. I read it twice. I put it in the same box where I keep Cassie's card from 2008, the one with no return address. Those two things do not belong together in any logical sense. I keep them in the same box anyway. My father and I have spoken on the phone 4 times since that night. The conversations are short and careful, the way conversations are when two people are feeling out the load-bearing capacity of something they are not sure can hold weight yet. I do not know what they will eventually become. I have stopped trying to predict it. Nana Ruth's $41,000 paid off my car, funded 6 months of living expenses, and bought a new set of winter tires for my mail route, which she would have considered the most practical use of the 3. The remainder is in a savings account. I have not decided what to do with it. For now, I leave it where it is. There is one more thing I have not told you yet. Gordon Farley found, in Nana Ruth's files, a photograph I had not known existed. She had kept it in the folder from 2005, the same folder as the note. It is a photograph of me, taken sometime when I was small, standing on her porch with my arms full of beans from the garden. I am looking directly at the camera with the particular expression children have when they are trying to look serious and cannot quite manage it. She had written on the back, in her handwriting, Nora, 7 years old, pays attention. I keep it on my nightstand now, in the spot where the other photograph used to be. Tuesday mornings I leave the house at 5:50 because Route 12 starts at 6 and I do not like to be late. This time of year it is still dark when I pull out of the lot, and the hills are just shapes against a slightly lighter sky, and the road goes out ahead of me the same way it always has. 41 miles. Every box. Every name. I have not missed a delivery day in 9 years. I do not intend to start. If any part of this sounds like something that happened to you, I would want to hear about it in the comments. And if you want to know what happened when my father's estate documents were finally corrected, there is more to this story.